Hey, old-timer, you lost? The voice, sharp and laced with the easy arrogance of youth and proven lethality, cut through the desert shimmer. Lieutenant Jake Hotshot Carter, leader of SEAL Team 3's Alpha Platoon, stood with his hands on his hips, his silhouette a perfect specimen of modern warfare against the Nevada sun. His team, a collection of sculpted muscle and quiet confidence, lounged behind him, their multi-thousand-dollar sniper systems resting on bipods like sleeping predators. This is a restricted naval special warfare range. Civilians aren't authorized. His eyes flicked down to the object of his scorn. It was an old man, seated on a simple folding stool, his face a roadmap of wrinkles carved by decades of sun and concentration. But it wasn't the man that drew Hotshot's contempt. It was the rifle laid across his lap. It was long, bolt-action, and painted a bizarre, faded shade of olive green. It looked like something a grandfather would hang over a fireplace, not a tool for the bleeding edge of combat. The old man didn't look up. He simply continued to wipe a large, antiquated-looking lens with a piece of worn chamois cloth. His movements were slow, deliberate, and utterly unbothered. "I'm where I'm supposed to be, son," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble that seemed to be dredged up from deep within his chest. The other SEALs exchanged smirks. The term son, coming from the frail-looking man, was almost comical. Hotshot's smirk widened into a condescending grin. "Is that so? And what, pray tell, is that thing? Did you win it at a county fair?" He gestured with his chin toward the green rifle. "We're running drills with the CheyTac M200 intervention here, pushing the 408 cartridge to its limits. I'm not sure your musket can even reach the first target berm." The old man finally paused his cleaning. He looked up, and for the first time, Hotshot saw his eyes. They were a pale, washed-out blue, yet they held a depth and stillness that was unsettling. It was like looking into the calm water of a deep well. There was no anger, no defensiveness, just a quiet, patient assessment. "She's got a name," the old man said softly. "It's Veridian," one of the younger SEALs, a wisecracker named Miller, snorted. "Veridian? What, like the color? What's with the baby poop green, anyway? Trying to blend in with a golf course?" The laughter was quiet but sharp. These men were a brotherhood forged in the harshest environments on Earth. An outsider, especially one who seemed so utterly out of place, was fair game. Hotshot felt emboldened by his team's reaction. He stepped closer, looming over the seated man. "Look, Grandpa, we're conducting serious training here. We don't have time for whatever this is. So why don't you pack up your little science project and head back to the VFW hall for bingo?" The old man set his cloth down, his movements economical. He ran a gnarled finger along the rifle's stock, a gesture of deep familiarity, like stroking a beloved pet. The wood was worn smooth in places, the strange green paint chipped and faded, revealing layers of other colors underneath, like the rings of a tree. The scope was a long brass tube, devoid of the complex knobs and digital readouts that adorned their own optics. It looked ancient, a relic from a forgotten war. "This rifle," the old man said, his voice still even, "has been places your computer crunch ballistics tables can't even calculate. It's earned its rest. But sometimes, it likes to get some sun." The desert wind picked up, whipping dust devils across the cracked earth. The SEALs were getting frustrated. They were working on a 3,000-meter shot, a monumental challenge of skill, technology, and instinct. The shifting mirage and unpredictable crosswinds were making it nearly impossible. Even with their spotters calling out wind adjustments from advanced Kestrel weather meters and their ballistic apps doing the heavy lifting, their 408 rounds were drifting frustratingly wide of the distant steel plate. Hotshot himself had just missed 3 consecutive shots, his pride stinging with each silent failure relayed by his spotter. He turned his frustration on the easiest target available, the old man. He was still just sitting there, watching them, his expression unreadable. To Hotshot, it felt like judgment. "All right, that's it," he snapped, striding back over. "You've been sitting there all morning with that smug look on your face. You think it's so easy? You think you can do better with that relic?" He jabbed a finger in the old man's direction. "Put up or shut up. Show us what that antique can do." The challenge hung in the air, thick and heavy. The other SEALs stopped their own preparations, turning to watch the confrontation. This was better than training. The senior chief petty officer overseeing the range, a man named Gunnar Henderson, took a half-step forward, a flicker of concern on his face, but he held his tongue. To everyone's astonishment, the old man slowly, deliberately, nodded. A single, decisive dip of his head. He didn't offer a witty retort or a boastful claim. He just agreed. The quiet acceptance was more shocking than any argument would have been. A wave of amused anticipation rippled through the platoon. This was going to be hilarious. They imagined the old man fumbling with the bolt, struggling to even see the target, the bullet probably kicking up dust 1,000 meters short. Miller started filming on his phone, ready to capture the inevitable failure for later mockery. The old man rose from his stool, his joints creaking audibly. He was taller than he looked sitting down, with a wiry strength that his loose-fitting clothes had concealed. He moved to an open firing mat and lay down, settling in behind his strange green rifle. His movements were fluid, practiced, a stark contrast to his aged appearance. There was no wasted motion. He didn't ask for a laser rangefinder or a wind reading. Instead, he pulled a small, battered leather-bound notebook and a pencil stub from his breast pocket. He licked his thumb, held it up to the wind, and watched the distant heat haze for a long moment. Then he scribbled a few notes in the book. It was an ancient, almost forgotten art. The SEALs, with their integrated technology, looked at each other in disbelief. It was like watching a blacksmith try to build a stealth fighter. "What's the matter, Pops?" Hotshot taunted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did your ballistic calculator run out of batteries?" The old man ignored him. He was in his own world now. His connection was not with a computer, but with the rifle, the wind, and the earth. He adjusted the bipod, settled his shoulder into the worn stock of Veridian, and put his eye to the brass scope. Hotshot, determined to make the humiliation absolute, decided to raise the stakes to an impossible level. His eyes scanned the far horizon, past the standard training targets, past even the extreme long-range markers. He pointed to a tiny speck, a glint of metal shimmering in the heat haze. So far away, it was practically on the curvature of the earth. "There," he sneered, a cruel triumph in his voice. "That's your target," Gunner Henderson, the range chief, finally spoke up, his voice tight with alarm. "Lieutenant, that's the sensor calibration plate. It's at 5,600 meters. That's 3.5 miles. It's not a target, it's a landmark. No rifle on this range can touch that, not even the 50 calories." Hotshot waved a dismissive hand. "Let him try. He's the expert, right?" He turned back to the old man. "Hit that, and I'll personally carry your rifle back to the retirement home myself. I'll even polish it for you." The absurdity of the challenge was lost on him. It was a distance that defied the known capabilities of shoulder-fired ballistics. The bullet would be in the air for over 10 seconds. It would climb to an apogee of hundreds of feet, like a mortar round. The Coriolis effect, the spin of the Earth itself, would become a major factor. Calculating such a shot required a supercomputer. For the old man, with his pencil and notebook, it was a fool's errand. Yet, the man on the mat didn't flinch. He didn't even look back. He simply made a few more clicks of adjustment on the ancient scope's turret, the sound crisp and metallic in the tense silence. The world seemed to shrink, focusing entirely on the prone figure and his green rifle. The cocky chatter of the SEALs died away, replaced by a thick, expectant hush. Even the desert wind seemed to hold its breath. The old man's entire being was concentrated on the task. His breathing was slow, rhythmic, each exhale a tiny puff of dust in front of his face. He became part of the landscape, as still and patient as the mountains on the horizon. He lay there for a full minute, his eye pressed to the scope, his finger resting lightly on the trigger. He wasn't just looking. He was reading the air, feeling the subtle shifts in temperature and pressure, sensing the world in a way the young SEALs with all their technology had forgotten how to do. Then, he took one last, deep breath, let half of it out, and the world went silent in his mind. He squeezed the trigger. The sound was not the sharp, deafening crack of their modern rifles. It was a deep, resonant thump, a powerful, authoritative boom that seemed to vibrate in their chests. It was the sound of controlled thunder. The rifle recoiled against his shoulder, and he absorbed it effortlessly, his eye never leaving the scope, watching the invisible path of the bullet he had just sent on its impossible journey. The heavy projectile was now airborne, a tiny speck of copper, and led on a 10-second odyssey across the desert. 1 second, 2 seconds. The SEALs stared at the distant target through their own high-powered optics, seeing nothing. 3 seconds. 4. Miller kept his phone steady, a smirk still playing on his lips. 5. 6. Hotshot crossed his arms, the picture of smug certainty. This was the part where the bullet would fall harmlessly into the sand, thousands of meters short. 7. 8. A few of the younger SEALs were starting to look nervous. The old man's unnerving calm was getting to them. 9. 10. The silence stretched, becoming agonizingly long. 11 seconds. 12. Just as Hotshot was about to open his mouth to declare the miss, a sound reached them. It wasn't loud. It was a faint, tinny ping, a sound that had traveled 3.5 miles to reach their ears. At the exact same moment, the high-definition range camera, zoomed in on the calibration plate, registered the impact. The screen in the command tent flashed, and the steel plate, a full inch of hardened AR-500 steel, visibly jumped. A perfect, dead-center hit. A collective gasp went through the platoon. Phones drooped. Jaws hung slack. Miller's recording wavered as his hand trembled. It was impossible. It simply could not have happened. It defied physics. It defied everything they had ever been taught about the science of marksmanship. Hotshot stared, his face pale, his mind refusing to process what his eyes had just seen. No, no way, he stammered, his voice barely a whisper. A fluke. A 1 in a billion lucky shot. The wind, it must have just, it's impossible. Gunnar Henderson walked over, his face a mask of profound respect. He looked down at the old man, who was now calmly working the bolt to eject the spent casing. No, Lieutenant, the chief said, his voice low and firm. That wasn't a fluke. As if on cue, the distant rumble of an engine grew louder. A black, government-issue Chevrolet Suburban, which had been parked discreetly on a service road a quarter-mile away, rolled smoothly across the dirt and came to a stop behind the firing line. The SEALs, trained to react to any unexpected presence, tensed up. The rear door opened, and a man stepped out. He was tall, ramrod straight, and wore the immaculate service dress uniform of a 4-star admiral. On his collar, the silver stars gleamed in the harsh sun. The entire platoon, including Hotshot, snapped to attention, their spines rigid, their minds racing. Who was this? Why was the commander of Naval Special Warfare himself out here on a live-fire range? The Admiral's eyes, as sharp and piercing as an eagle's, swept over the stunned faces of the SEALs. He gave them a curt, dismissive nod, then walked straight past them, his polished shoes crunching on the gravel. He ignored their salutes. His sole focus was the old man, who was slowly getting to his feet. The Admiral stopped before him and, to the utter bewilderment of everyone present, rendered a sharp, perfect salute. Elias, the Admiral said, his voice filled with a warmth and reverence that was completely at odds with his rank. I hoped I'd find you here. Still showing the kids how it's done. I see, the old man simply nodded, a faint smile touching his lips for the first time. They needed a lesson in humility, Admiral. It's the one thing the simulators can't teach. The Admiral then turned, his gaze falling upon the platoon, and his expression hardened into one of cold disappointment. He fixed his eyes on Lieutenant Carter. Gentlemen, he began, his voice dropping to an icy, dangerous level. Do you have any idea who you've been speaking to? Hotshot stood frozen, his mind a maelstrom of confusion and dawning horror. The Admiral didn't wait for an answer. You stand there with your $500 sunglasses and your GPS-linked ballistics computers, and you think you're the tip of the spear. You are. But you're standing on the shoulders of giants you can't even see. He gestured toward the old man. This is Master Chief Petty Officer Elias Vance. To the history books, he doesn't exist. There are no records of his service, no public commendations. To the very few who know, he was known by one name. Ghost, he was a founding member of the unit that you now call SEAL Team 6. He wrote the book on long-range special warfare operations. He literally invented half the techniques you learn in sniper school. The Admiral's voice was like chipping granite. That relic you were mocking? He pointed to the green rifle, which Elias now held cradled in his arm. That's Veridian. There's only one. It was custom-built for him in 1968. With that rifle, he made a shot in the highlands of Vietnam that officially never happened. A shot that saved an entire company of Green Berets from being overrun. He did it in a monsoon, at night, from a moving helicopter. He did it with a pencil and that notebook. The 5,600-meter shot you just witnessed? That wasn't even his personal best. The SEALs looked at Elias Vance as if seeing him for the first time. The frail old man was gone. In his place stood a legend, a ghost from the pages of their own hallowed history. The faded green rifle was no longer an antique. It was a sacred artifact, a weapon that had shaped the very course of modern warfare. The weight of their ignorance, their casual, cruel disrespect, crashed down on them with suffocating force. Lieutenant Carter felt the blood drain from his face. Every arrogant word, every condescending sneer he had directed at this man now echoed in his mind, each one a fresh wave of shame. He was a SEAL, an operator at the pinnacle of the world's military elite. He was trained to be observant, to assess threats, to understand his environment. And he had failed. He had looked at one of the founding fathers of his own brotherhood and had seen nothing but a weak, old man. His arrogance had made him blind. He took a hesitant step forward, his body rigid with a humility he had never known. He stopped in front of Elias, his eyes fixed on the ground. He couldn't bring himself to meet the old warrior's gaze. "Master Chief," he began, his voice cracking, utterly stripped of its earlier confidence. I have no excuse. My conduct was unprofessional, disrespectful, and unacceptable. I am deeply sorry." He finally forced himself to look up into those pale blue eyes. He expected to see anger or contempt, or at least a cold satisfaction. He saw none of it. Elias Vance looked at him with a profound, weary patience, the look of a teacher dealing with a promising but foolish student. "Son," Elias said, his voice gentle but firm, "the weapon is just a tool. The uniform is just a piece of cloth. The technology you have is a gift, but it can also be a crutch." He tapped his own temple with a gnarled finger. "It's the steel in here, the discipline and the knowledge, that makes a warrior." Then he tapped his chest, over his heart. "And it's the heart in here, the respect for those who came before you and for the enemy you may face, that makes a man. Respect is earned in the field, not issued with your gear." He reached out a weathered hand and placed it on Hotshot's shoulder. The gesture was not one of condemnation, but of forgiveness, of continuation. "You're good at what you do, Lieutenant. Now learn to be wise." With that, Elias Vance gave the young SEAL a final nod, slung Veridian over his shoulder, and walked with the Admiral toward the waiting Suburban, leaving an entire platoon of humbled operators standing in his wake, the impossible echo of his single shot still ringing in the desert air.